Beginning our Daf Mesechta Bava Metzia Daf begins 6 lines down at the top of the Yamid, where the Gemara is just in the middle of a conversation over here. We introduced a teaching, which was very random in a way, from the price that we brought of regarding if someone sees water coming to flood, he has to make a wall in front of it. So the Gemara will introduce a teaching of Rava that will reflect right back to that teaching, and then continue along our previous Mishnah, discussing regarding what's considered a lost object. Shiz corresponds because the today's daf the entire world. So discussing today's daf, the theme of our Mishnah is Ezi Aveda. What's considered a lost object? Meaning, how do you know something's lost? Maybe it was just put there. Maybe it's not really lost. The halacha of par roin baderech, regarding if a cow is grazing on the road, not running, grazing, that ain't Aveda, that's not considered lost. Par rotza ben akramim, if it's running between the vineyards, that is Aveda. And then we have Machlekes Abaye and Rava regarding, well, what happens if it's neither extreme? It's rotza baderech. I mean, we spoke about grazing on the road. What happens if it's rotza baderech? It's running on the road, so it has one good thing for it, one bad thing. Or v'roi ben akram, it's grazing between the vineyard, not running, because running's bad, and between the vineyards is bad. So the question is, what would be if it has one up and one down, versus the cases that we discuss are both two negatives versus two positives? That's Machlekes Abaye and Rava regarding what would be in that case. Also, the Mishnah tells us, if it runs away and he brings it back, it runs away even at 4 or 5 times, let's return the person's lost animal. Allah, however, that libin does bad. We don't have to have his awareness when you return, when you do Hashavas Aveda. And Allah, he bought the Masala, if the guy was in the middle of doing a job and he lost out a certain amount of money, he can't say, well, pay me how much I'm losing out now because I'm doing Hashavas Aveda, but rather he gets a payment like a poil bottle. Now, if the finder would rather do hard work and earn the seller than to do the easier work of Hashavas Aveda, then he could stipulate and say, look, I'm only doing it if I get compensated for the work that I would be doing, and only then will I do Hashavas Aveda. So we get the current Daf Lamed Aleph. We had mentioned in the previous Daf what's an Aveda. We said if you find a cow or a donkey grazing on the road, it's not an Aveda. So you might want to know, well, it depends. If it's at night, even one moment should be an Aveda. If it's in the morning, well, then even for many days it should not be an Aveda. So he said, well, the Chazal of Kadmasa b'chashchasa. He saw the animal very early, animals are very late. So for 3 days that wouldn't be an Aveda. That could happen. But more than that, that would be considered an Aveda. Now, in the conversation, we had mentioned, like we said, this teaching of Ra Maim Shashait from the vine, and the Gemara brings Amar Rava. This is 6 lines down at the top of the Yamid. Which Rashi says just an independent teaching of Rava that he said in the base of Medrash, but it's going to relate right back to the previous teaching. It says in the pasuk in Devarim that when you have to do Hashavas Aveda, l'chol Aveda Sachicha, for all the lost objects of your brother. What's all? L'rabis, that's a riboy, the word l'chol, to include Aveda's karka, that if there's a loss of his property, you have a chiv Hashavas Aveda on karka too. So Amalei Rav Chananya, l'Rav says, Tanya Meseilach. We have a Bryce that supports you, which was the last line we said from the top of the summit. The Bryce said, Ra Maim Shashait from the point. If someone sees that water is coming to flood someone else's property, there's a good name as a chiv of putting up a wall to block the property from being flooded. So you see that this Hashavas Aveda on karka too. Amalei says to him, if that's my proof, loite yasei, it doesn't support me. Because what are we talking about over here in the Bryce is B'dika Imran, that there are bundles, there are sheaves on the property. You don't have to do it for the property, you have to do it because of the piles, the bundles of grain that he has over there. So it says the Gemara there, and if there's bundles, my member, then what do you have to say? In other words, then of course, because of the bundles, is included in Aveda, because it's no different than the specifics mentioned in the pasuk of a sheep or a clothing. Why would I need lakol to include it? It must be for the karka itself. Says the Gemara, no, loit tzricha, says Rava, no, you would need it to ispe amran, the tzricha la'ara. There were bundles that were still needed the ground. So therefore, mao the tema, would you say came in the tzricha la'ara since it needs the ground? Kigu for the aradam, it's like the ground itself. And that I would have thought to say that it wouldn't have a chiv of Hashavas Aveda because I would not know this halacha, kamash malan, that no, that even though it needs the ground, it is like se and salma. But you don't have proof that when there's no bundles at all and it's just property, that there is a chiyuv for Shabbos Aveda, and therefore it says that the Brisa does not necessarily support this halacha that there's a Shabbos Aveda on karka itself. It might be oimrin, bundles that need the karka, that would have the halacha of Hashavas Aveda of putting up a wall. Now, going back to the halacha of the Mishnah, we said that Motza Chamor Upara B'chulu. There was a contradictory inferences of the Mishnah, because we mentioned that if you find Para Ratza Ben Akramim, if you find the cow running between the vineyards, that's going to be considered as Naveda. And then we say, but if you find the cow and the donkey grazing on the road, it's not an Aveda. So the Gemara is going to ask a contradiction. Haguva Kasha. It seems to be an internal contradiction in the diukim, in the inferences of the Mishnah. As the Gemara explains. Amit, you said, he said, if you find a donkey or a cow just grazing on the road, in Zaved, it's not a lost object. The inference is, roin baderech, if it's grazing on the road, it's just walking around slowly, eating from the grass. It's not considered as a lost object. Now, there's two positives in this scenario. Number one, it's just grazing. It's not doing anything dangerous. Number two, even if it was running, it wouldn't get injured because it's on, like you want to take your 16-year-old boy to drive around, take him to open parking lot. Like, even if he goes crazy, he doesn't know how to drive, not going to smash into anything. So he's on the road, there's nothing dangerous over there, and he's grazing. That sounds like that's not going to be a lost object. The inference, however, is hadratza b'derech, but if he's running, not just grazing, he's running, or v'raya, even if he's grazing, but bein akram, between the vineyards, to get tangled in the vines or whatever, get injured. Either one of those sounds like havi aveda, because there's one negative. One positive, one negative would be an aveda. Problem is, ima seifa. Let's look at the seifa. The seifa says, chamor v'kelev afuchim. If you come and you find a donkey overturned with its vessels over it, or, and this is the main case, upada ratza ben akram, you find a cow running between the vineyards. Hariz aveda, that's a lost object. The inference is ratza ben hakramim. Two negatives. Running between the vineyards, hudav aveda. That's where it's going to be considered as a lost object, because number one, it's running, and number two, it's going to get injured by the vines. But if it's running only on the road, where there's only one negative, that it's running, and it's going to get injured when it's running. Or, says Rashi, the problem with running is it's going to run away. But that case, if it's only running on the road, or if it's grazing between the vineyards, again, only one negative, because even though it's not running, it's only grazing, but it could get stuck with the vines. Sounds like Ein Zu Aveda. That would not be considered as a lost object. So we have a stira in the inferences of the Reish and the Seifa of our Mishnah. So that we have two approaches in the Gemara. Amar Abaye. Abaye says, quoting a pasuk in Eiv, says Yagir love Reya. So Reya doesn't mean his friend. Reya is from the word of like Ra'am, which is thunder, like a lashon of Teruah, of making noise. That it tells you that the rain is coming. So its thunder will tell you about something else. So basically, Abaye is saying that we only said one case, but there's another case included, as he explains. Tana learned, Roya B'derech, we said that if it's grazing on the road, the Lehavi Aveda. But it's not that that's the only case. It's teaching you about another case, Yagir of Reya. The truth is, Vodin Leroya Ben Akramim. The same thing would be if it's grazing in the vineyards. And moreover, Tana, when the Sefer says Ratza Ben Akramim, when it's running in the vineyards, have Aveda, it's going to be a lost object. But then the same thing is L'Ratza B'derech. If it's running on the road, would also be considered as an Aved, because according to Abaye, the primary is how is it going? Is it grazing? Then it's always okay. If it's running, then it's never okay. The Reisha was talking about the grazing, and the Sefer was talking about the running. But it doesn't make a difference where it is. The fact we only said one case, but it would be another case included, so there's no contradictory inferences. Running is bad, and grazing is good. However, Amalei Rava doesn't like Abaye's interpretation. He says, if it's true like you're saying, that it only said one case, but it's teaching you about another case too, then listni kilsa, say the less severe, the meaning the bigger chiddush, because can chamirta, and then for sure the more severe, as he explains. Listening, the Sefer should have said, you want to tell me what's considered as naveda, you should have said rotza baderech, that's the bigger chiddush, even if it's on the road, but if it's running, aveda, that's a lost object. Oh, but koshken rotza ben akram, for sure, if it's running amongst the vineyards, for sure it's a lost object, it has two negatives. Why are you picking only the case of running in the vineyards? And also, but listening in the Reishna, it should have said roya ben akram, should have said the bigger chiddush, that even if it's in the vineyards, which it could get injured, but it's only grazing, that's what Aveda is not a lost object. For sure, when it's grazing on the road, why you pick? You lost out on both Reish and Seif. You lost out what you could have said a bigger chiddush of what is and what's not an Aveda. So therefore, he doesn't like Abayi's pshat. Elama Rabba, rather, Rabba says, Ratza aratza like kasha. We're back to the question then. According to Rava, so the inference is contradictory when it's running on the road. Is that in Aveda or it's not? The case of the Reisha makes it sound like that it would be. The case of the Sefer sounds like it wouldn't be. Says it's not difficulty. The Reisha that the Dik sound like they're running on the road would be in Aveda is the Apol Legabi Dabra. If it's facing towards the forest, towards the away from the city, so that's an Aveda because it looks like it's running away. The Sefer, the inference that it's not an Aveda was an Apol Legabi Masa, where it's facing towards the city. So it's not a lost object because it's coming back home. Now, that's regarding the case of running on the derech. And Roya Namalakash, the case of grazing between the vineyards, which also had contradictory inferences because it had one positive that's grazing, had one negative that was between the vineyards. It's not difficult also because Khan, the Seifa that sounded like grazing in the vineyard is not an Aveda, is Baveda's Gufa, is regarding the loss of the body of the animal itself. So if it's grazing in the vineyard, it's not going to get injured. It's not a lost object. Khan, the Reisha that made it sound like that it is an Aveda, Baveda's Karka, is regarding the loss of the property, as the Gemara explains. Kikatani, when did the Reisha say Roya Baderech, that it's grazing on the road? Loi Havi Aveda, it's not going to be an Aveda. And the Dik was Haraya Ben Akram have Aveda, but if it's grazing between the vineyards and Aveda, that didn't mean the animal is going to get injured. That's Baveda's Karka. That's simply the vineyard. You have to get the animal out because it's going to ruin the vines in the vineyard. And v'chiktani, and whereas by the Sefer, when we said Rotza ben Akramim, that only if it's running between the vineyards, Have Aveda is going to be a lost object, that is regarding the animal itself, because it's going to get injured, it's running between the vines. And the inference was Haray ben Akram, but if it's grazing between the vines, Lo Aveda is not a lost object. That was Baveda's Gufa, that was regarding the loss of the animal itself. Because only the Rotza ben Akramim Mesakfa, only if it runs in the vineyards is going to get stuck and injured. But Haray ben Akram, like Mesakfa, if it's just grazing between the vineyards, it's not going to get injured. And therefore that resolves the contradiction. It depends on the case regarding running on the road if it's facing towards the city or away. And regarding grazing in between the vineyards, it depends if you're talking about the animal or the property. Says the Gemara, regarding the case of grazing between the vineyards, although you're telling me there's no Aveda of the animal itself, because it's not going to get stuck in the vines. But typically, Mishum Aveda's Karka. In other words, how do we understand the diuk that's teaching us that it's not an Aveda because the animal's not going to get injured, but that case diuk of saying that there's no Aveda, but what do you say about the Aveda of the Karka itself? You tell me the contradictory inference is the one that's talking about, that infers that if the animal is just grazing the vineyard, you don't have to get it out because there's nothing wrong with the body of the animal itself, but the inference still doesn't make sense because there's still the Karka, and you have to get it out because of the Karka. Says, no, but the kuti, that inferential case of when you don't have to get the animal out when it's grazing in the vineyard, is when the property belongs to a non-Jew. So there's no reason to get him out. The animal's not getting injured, and we don't care about the property getting ruined. But says the Gemara, typically Mishum Avedas Gufa. But wait, then if it's a non-Jew's property, then you do have to be concerned for the animal because it's a makatla. He comes out with a shotgun and he just shoots that cow walking over there. So that's why it is Avedas Gufa. Says Gemara, no, but Asr the Masru. It's a place where they first warn you, the katli, and then they kill you. First, they say, well, next time I see you on this property, your head is coming off, right? And then they kill. So therefore, there's no concern. But says, but maybe they already warned them once before, and maybe if you don't get the animal out, this animal is going to be someone's dinner very, very soon. Says Gemara, if they warned the owner and he wasn't careful, then so that's a deliberate lost object because you knew about it. You should have known. You could have known, and therefore you didn't care. You let Sally walk over the property line. That's it. You're not going to see him tonight for dinner. So again, that's why it's not difficult. Again, we had two different shots, Abai and Rava, how to resolve the contradictory, either because, like Abai says, the primary is if it's running or grazing. Rava didn't like that because you're saying the smaller chiddush is to the bigger chiddush. And Rava answers that it depends on the cases, if it's running towards the city away or if it's grazing regarding the karka or the animal itself. Now the Mishnah had told us, what happens if you return the guy's animal, it runs away. You return the animal, again it runs away. This animal's at risk, he can't stay home, he's always running away. The halach is hashav teshivim. You have to return this animal back 100 times. So related, he said to Rava, why so many times? Why 4 or 5 times? Why don't you say return is 1 time? Teshiv mistrezimni. Return it is 2 times. You're having a ribui. Well, who said more than that? That's it. What I have to. Somebody says no. The truth is it's not learned out from the extra word that you have to do another time. Return is you have to get this animal back home, and everyone belongs home. Bring them home now, and that's it. You have to get him back home, and that's even 100 times. Teshivim, why does it say the word teshivim? That's actually teaching you something else. That's ainly ella lebesa. I would only know that you have to return the animal or whatever the lost object is to the guy's house. Leginas, it is garden l'chorvasa to his ruin minayin. How do you know that's considered hashavas aved and yumi potter? Teshivim, the word return is mekam. Whatever the return is, even if it's an inferior return, it's going to be valid. So the Gemara says, wait a second. Hey, Chedam, what's the case talking about? If it's a protected property, pshita, of course, why do you have to put it in his hand? And you limit if it's not protected, then why would it be valid? So the Gemara says, no, the truth is that the area you return to is protected. The chiddush is that you don't need the owner's awareness to tell him. He says, hey, watch your cow that I returned to your garden because I found it lost. You don't need his awareness. Because Amay says, the truth is, all halachas, you need the owner's awareness. So if, let's say, you stole or you robbed or you're one of the 4 shayim that you returned the object, you have to notify him, hey, I returned. If you don't notify him and the animal dies or is stolen, you're actually responsible. Because since he knew that it was lost, he didn't know there is a return, he wasn't careful about it and he didn't feed it. There's one exception, which is what we're learning from Teshivim chutz me'ashavas aveda. Except for returning a lost object, because the Torah from the extra Teshivim includes many types of returns. Even if you don't let him know, it's going to be valid. Now, once we introduce this idea about the extra word, like Teshivim, so the Gemara goes through a whole long list of items that we learn out from the extra words. It says in the Torah in Devarim, it says regarding the mitzvah of shiluach hakein, of sending away the mother bird, it says shaleach teshalach, so aim, surely send away the mother, and then the children, the esabanam tikechlach, so that should be good for you and you live a long life. Now, says the Gemara, Ema, why don't you say shaleach means chadizim, and you have to send away the mother bird 1 time. Teshalach, from the word teshalach, send it away, is treizim, it means 2 times. So the Gemara's question is, because we learned in the Mishnah Masechtas Chulin, that if you send away the bird and it comes back, you send away and it comes back, even if 4 or 5 times, you have to continue sending away the mother bird. But why? Say teshalach means 2 times, more than that you shouldn't be chayiv. So again, the same type of approach as the Gemara Amalei says, no, shaleach, send it away, it sounds like even 100 times. Teshalach, why does it say the word teshalach? That's not adding another time. That's only ilal rishus. I would only know that when you want the eggs for your own optional reasonings, for your own volitional needs, and you don't need the bird just because you want to eat it. That's when you have to send it away. But lidvar mitzvah. But let's say you don't need the bird to eat it. You needed to use it for the purification, let's say, of a Messiah. How do you know that would be forbidden when the mother's on the babies? You should send it away. In all situations, we're including that even for a mitzvah purpose, you have to send it away.
Would it be in a day from?
What? Why did you say what was this?
Would it be in a day from?
What would it be an Aveira from? It would be and no, we're saying there's not very. You have to send away the mother bird.
Yeah, so if it wasn't mitzvah, sending a bird away and sitting on an egg, is that a pasuk?
No, I'm saying if let's say you need the bird for it's actually a shiloh when you send away the mother. Is it for the mother or for the babies?
Or shluch hakan.
Yeah. So when you
But
send,
you just said, if let's say you want the egg, are you allowed to move the mother?
right? No, so that's right. Exactly. We're
So
saying
get shluch hakan, let's say any bird.
right. No, right. Any bird, you have to send away the mother if you want it for your own purposes. You have to send away the mother bird if you want to take the eggs. Right. Yeah.
It's not a bear.
Oh, there is a never also. There's a mitzvah say and a mitzvah loisa say. The Torah says it in the positive and in the negative. So you have to send it away. The question would be for, let's say you only want it for a mitzvah purpose, that we're learning it from the word teshalach. Similarly, the Gemara again does this. One of the rabbis said to Rav, let's say it is a pasuk, well-known pasuk in Miyikra, that we want to rebuke someone. Don't hate your brother in your heart. You should surely rebuke as a mesecha and don't let it be considered as a sin. So the word rebuke should be chadazim one time. Techiach rebuke trace him 2 times. You have to give muster so many times. That's it. So Amalei says no. Techiach to rebuke. That sounds like even 100 times. You got to do it and you got to tell him and let him know. Techiach. That's not teaching you another time. That's the only halarav l'talmud. That's only the Rebbe to the Talmud. He zook the man. He says, Talmud l'Rab Menayin. A student to the Rebbe, to the Rav. How do you know that he could give mussar to the Rav too? It says, rebuke shall rebuke me in those situations. Just make sure it's like the pasuk ends of leisisel avchet. He doesn't get embarrassed from it. But if you do it the right way, then yes, it's even the Talmud to the Rav. Now again, another pasuk it says in Shmos. It says, Azoiv tazoiv imoy. Helping you shall help him. Which that pasuk is that when you see the donkey of your enemy laying beneath its load, and you're gonna remove yourself from helping him. No, you shall surely help him. So I would only know if the owner is with him, helping him out. How do you know if the owner is not helping out? You still have to unload the guy's animal. Says you shall surely help this, which it means prika, which means unloading. And whatever the situation is, then you have an obligation to help him out. Now, when it says a pasuk of hakim takim imay, which this pasuk is, you shouldn't see your friend's donkey or ox that fell on the road, and you're going to just turn the blind eye. No, you shall surely help him out. So in I would only know if the owner's with him. If the owner's not with him, how do you know that you still have to help him load up the animal? The extra word takim, which is the mitzvah of te'ina, of loading up the animal, in all situations. So now once we brought these 2 mitzvahs of what's called prika and te'ina, of unloading the animal where it's like crushed under its load, or te'ina, which is helping hakim takim, loading up the animal if it fell off. So says the Gemara, why do we need both psukim? Aren't they the same idea? You have to tell me all these specifics. If the food fell off the truck, if to put take the food off the truck. Why do you need a mitzvah of loading up the animal or unloading? Says the Gemara, you need it because the Torah only written about unloading the animal. I would have said first of all, an animal being crushed under the load is pain for the living creature. That's number one. And there's also a loss of money because the animal is getting ruined by being crushed under the load. But loading up the animal, that number one, the love because there's no pain for the animal, to the contrary, it's happy it's not being loaded up. And number two, there's no loss of money because there's nothing that's deteriorating while things are on the floor. I would say that there's no mitzvah. So that's why you have to say the mitzvah of te'ina. And the other way around also, we only say the mitzvah of loading up, mishum de bischar, because you actually have to, the guy has to, you have to pay the guy who helps you load up. As the Gemara is going to say on the next daf, there's an opinion that holds that loading up, you have to pay the guy. But unloading, he has a mitzvah to do it for free. So maybe then the mitzvah of te'ina, because you get paid. That's why. But when unloading the bechinim that's done for free, I would say you have no obligation. You have to say also the mitzvah of prika, which is to tell you to do it also for free. Says Gemara, but Rabbi Shimon holds that even loading up is done for free. So, Michael, man, what are you going to say if you know the mitzvah of te'ina, which is for free? For sure, you know the mitzvah of perika, which is Tzabal Chayim and Chasan Kids. For sure, you would have to do it. Says Gemara, you're right, but Rabbi Shimon le'Mesai Mikroi. That according to Rabbi Shimon, it's not clear which pasuk sounds like loading up the animal and which one sounds like unloading the animal. Had we written only one pasuk, I would have said it's coming to teach a mitzvah of unloading, which has more reasonings, but not to load up. So therefore, you have to write the other pasuk to teach you about loading up the animal. Says the Gemara, but but why do you have to write these two mitzvahs of Prika and Te'ina? Why do you have to write mitzvah Shavas Aveda? Write either this or that, and you could learn out the other one from this, because all these are basically warnings to be careful with a Jew's money. Returning a lost object, unloading his animal. Why have to say all these different examples? Why wouldn't I know one from the other? They're necessary, because had we only written Prika and Te'ina, Mishum Tzara, the Tzara Demari Isa. First of all, you have the pain of the owner who's standing over there. He can't load up the animal himself. He can't unload himself. And it's Tzara Dida'i. So there's the pain of the animal for definitely unloading and possibly even for loading it up. But regarding a lost object, the Tzara Demari Isa, you have the pain of the owner who he obviously lost his object. But Tzara Dida'i, you don't have the pain of the animal. He's very happy grazing wherever he got lost or whatever the object is. I would say that there's no halacha of returning. Therefore, you have to say Hashav as Aveda. We said the case of a lost object, because the owner's not there to help out and put in the effort in returning it because he doesn't know where it is. So that's where you have a chiyuv to go do Hashav as Aveda. But as we continue them at base of Hani Tarti, but these two cases of pre-Ketina, the Islamar Bada, the owner is there because it says Imai. Imai, Imai, he's there. I would say that you don't have to help him out. Let him go find other people and hire workers to go ahead and get the load up or down. So it was necessary to say that no, there's a mitzvah of pre-Ketina of helping him out, of loading and unloading his animal. Now, continuing this theme about redundant words in the Torah and what we're learning out from the extra word. So there's another pasuk in Bamidbar that it talks about if someone with hatred kills someone. So the murderer definitely gets killed. He's a murderer. And the redeemer of the blood should kill the murderer when he meets him. Now the pasuk says, Mois yumas hamaka, that the one who had killed, shall surely be killed. Now it says a redundant terminology, Mois yumas. So I would only know the death that's written in the Torah for Retzeach, which is by Sayif, with the sword. From where do we know that if you cannot execute him with the death that's written in him with the sword? For example, let's say he was in the boat and he was running away, but you could shoot an arrow at him, or you could sink the ship. You could kill him however it takes to kill him. It says extra word you must to tell you whatever it takes to kill him, you could do it. Another pasuk in Devarim, it says that this is in the context of the Ir Hanidachas. Ir Hanidachas is the majority of the city did Avodah Zarah. So it says you haketake, you kill the Yeshve Irahi, the people of that city, with the sword, and everything that's inside the city, the animals, everything gets killed. Now it says a double terminology, haketake. So I would only know that you're allowed to kill out the members of the city with the death that says regarding the sword. From where do you know that if you cannot, let's say, execute them by the sword, that you could kill them, whatever type of death you can get? It says to smite them, to smite them, that whatever it takes, then you can kill them with. Another pasuk, it says, pasuk in Devar, it says hashiv tashiv. This is talking about you should surely return the avit, which is the collateral of a borrower that you have. When the son comes and you lay down with his garment, and God will bless you, and it will be for you charity in front of Hashem your God. So when it talks about the halacha of returning the collateral, I would only know that if, let's say, the claimant had gone to court, he was screaming about his borrower is not paying up, so the agents of the court went to grab that guy's movable items, because as Rashi explained, the pasuk of returning this guy's collateral is on that, because the pasuk previously says on the outside you stand, and the man will bring out something which the Gemara on Daf Kufya Gimel tells us it's talking about an agent of the court. So if I would only know you have an obligation to return this guy's collateral, the security, if it was taken with the permission of the courts. Mishkan Bezdin, but let's say it was taken without the permission of the courts, which Taisus references what he says on Daf Kufya Gimel, that if it's done without that, then it shouldn't be considered as done. But Al Kapanim, Minayin, where do you know that you would have to return the security if it was done without the permission of the courts, where we don't have an explicit reference in the pasuk? Because, like we said, the mitzvah is talking about when the agent of the court had done it. When you did it without the permission of the courts, how do you know that even then you have an obligation to return the collateral? The extra word tashiv is mikamokum. In all situations, you have an obligation to return the security for when the person needs it. Now, there's a similar pasuk in Shemais that says, if chavel tachbal, it really means the same thing. If you're going to take security of your friend's garment, until the son comes, you should return it to him. So, again, I would only know, as Rashi explains, that stam chavala, the taking security, not injury, security is based on the courts. Because it's not so common that a person would have the audacity to come into someone's house and take his movable items without permission. So if there's a mitzvah in the Torah tell me to return the security, I would only know if it was taken with permission. If it was taken security without permission, how do you know that you still have an obligation to return it? The extra doesn't become all situations. So the Gemara says, wait, why do I need two psukim to teach about returning a mashkin of security? They're both saying the same idea. Says the Gemara, one is for a day garment, one's for a night garment. They're both talking about garments, but this is how the Gemara later on the Kufya down in the Makabal explains these psukim. One pasuk is b'shachav b'salmasai, which is laying down his garment. That's a night garment. That's hashiv tashiv. Another one is salmas re'echa, is his day garment, is his jacket. That's chabal tachbal. One is teaching a day garment. One's teaching a night garment. That whenever he needs it, you have it. You have it on the off times. When he needs it, you have an obligation to return that. And again, they both learned that from the extra word of tashiv or of tachbal. Another pasuk we have in Nevarim. The pasuk says that when pasayach tiftach, you're going to open up your hand to him, to the poor person. So I would only know you have an obligation to give tzedakah for the poor people of your town. They come from all over. They come poor people from other towns. How do you know you have an obligation to give them? It's in the pasuk. The extra word opening up of your hands is telling you you open up those grubby little fingers and give those people coming collecting tzedakahs, no matter where they're coming from. Now, there's a pasuk in Devarim that says, Nasan titin, you shall surely give him. It shouldn't be bad in your heart when you're giving him, because it's because of this that God blesses you, whatever you do, and everything that sends forth from your hand. So, I would only know that you have a nice $100 bill to pull out for the person collecting, then you're going to give tzedakah. How do you know if you have a small gift? Meaning, if you cannot give a large thing, you only have a quarter, you have $1 in your back pocket, how do you know that you have an obligation to give? Tam 11 says, Nosen titin. Extra word titin is mekamakum, whatever you give. Busma can give him. Says you give, that's it. Now, going back, so now there's another pasuk, a pasuk in Devar, that says Hanik Tanik. This is that you have to load up your slave when you send them free from your sheep and from your grain and from your wine and for everything God blessed you because of the slave, you give him from your blessings. Now, I would only know if your household was blessed by having this slave, because that's what the pasuk says. That God blessed you, that's what you give him. Then manikim, then you load him up. How do you know even if your house was not blessed because of the slave, you still have to load him up from what you have in your assets? Next word tanik is you load him up even if the house was not blessed because of him. Now, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, the Amar, but according to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, he says in Kedushin Daf Yudzayin Beis, no, it's like the pasuk says, only if the house was blessed because of him. Manikin, then you load him up. Below in this Baruch the house was not blessed because of him. You don't load him up. So tanik lamali. What?
How do you know it's because of them?
No, meaning to say that you had more blessings when he was there. You know, when the Rebbe came, suddenly all the yeshiyas is gepiled, So when the slave was there, you had. So according to him, Tanik Lamali, he holds you don't include Loinis Baruch Abayis Baglali. So what does the word Tanik teach? Says the Gemara, he would tell you that you're right. The Torah speaks in just the way people speak. People are very redundant in their terminology. Oh, surely, tonic. It doesn't mean anything. It's just Torah talks the way people speak. You're not learning anything from it. Now, going back to the pasuk we had mentioned before in Devarim, which keep Yisayich Tiftach as Yod Chalai, says there in that same pasuk, Havit Tavitenu, you shall surely lend this person what's enough for him, what he's missing. I would only know if the guy that you're lending to doesn't have what to provide for himself, and ve'ena reitzel lehisparnis, and he also doesn't want to go ahead and provide from you what you have to give as a gift. So Amar, that's what Torah says. Okay, look, tenloi, give him a havit, give him derech hava through a loan. That's what I would say. Havit would teach me. But yesh loi ve'ena reitzel lehisparnis. Let's say guy has money, but he doesn't want to provide from his own. He's one of these misers. He only wants from you. Minayin, how do you know that you have to give him a havata? You have to give him a loan and collect from him after he dies. You'll collect because the guy had money, just didn't want. He was like starving himself because he wanted from you. So you give him a loan, and then after he dies, you collect it. How do you know that? That's mikamokum. This is how the Gemara Ksubis basically explains it. It's learned out from the extra word tavitan. You have to lend him even if he has, but he doesn't want to take from his miserly bank account that he has not locked away, and that because his whole family's starving. So even then you have to lend him. That's what you learn from Tabitan. But says the Gemara Rabbi Shimon that he says, no. Yes, this guy has money, doesn't want to provide from it. In the skakel, we don't have to deal with crazy people. Let him die. Tabitanu lamali. So what do you learn from Tabitana? Says the Gemara, yeah, he would also tell you the Torah is just speaking the way people normally speak. Now the problem is Tyson in the Maskal Dibri Torah says, so what? You tell me according to Rabbi Shimon and according to Rabbi Elazar and Nazario, all the drushes we had in this whole daf, you tell me that they don't hold up any of them because Dibur Turkul Kolashim the Adam, and moreover he brings rayas that Rabbi Shimon himself from the word aser ta'aser does darshan from the extra word ta'aser. One's ma'aser dagan, one's ma'aser behema. So I thought the Torah talks in redundancy. So why would you darshan something? Tais says very importantly. He says no. It's only over here these two cases that Rabbi Elazar and Zariah and Rabbi Shimon talk about that's where they say Dibur Turkul Kolashim the Adam, because the pasuk is obvious that you cannot include what we're including, because it says Deimachsare. You said you lend him only what he's missing. The guy's not missing. This guy's worth a few $1 million. I have to go and lend him money. The Torah is explicitly telling you not. And so too in the case of the Eved, how could you include Hanik Tanik that even if the house was not blessed, because the Torah says that Asher B'rachacha, that only because you're blessed. So it's only over there they say Dibur Torah. But you're right. When we don't have a contra-indication, then we will include, even according to them, other things. Like we see Rabbi Shimon himself darshans aser to aser. Now the Mishnah said that with this guy who has to do Hashavas Aveda, this guy's in the middle of doing, he's a lakeway driver. He has a run he could make. And he finds something, a guy lost something. He says, I could make a run now for this 15 minutes. I'm going to return this item. I could have made $25. It's prime time now. And I'm losing it. So the Mishnah says, Lo Yamallah, he can't tell the guy who lost the object, Ten li sela, pay me for the ride I could have done. Rather, he gives him his wages like a worker. So what does it mean a worker? So Tana is the gear. So we learned in the Brisa that Nois Neschar Kapayel bottle. He gives him his wages like a worker who's not working. Says he went my Kapayel bottle. What does that mean? Like a worker is not working, but he's not bottle. He's putting in the effort in returning it. And the Bryce is teaching that you give him the measurement according to how much a worker would want to take to not do work and to sit and do nothing, but he's not doing nothing. So what are you paying him like a pile bata, like a worker who's not working? So how much would you want to take? I usually get in an hour I can make $500. How much would I take that I wouldn't have to work at all? I would take $200. Yeah, if I don't have to work, just sit back, passive income, I'll do 200. But the problem is this guy's not just sitting back. The guy's on the same run in his car trying to return an object for you. So what does that mean, kapel bottle? So Mavayi qualifies, says no, kapel bottle shall oisa malacha the bottle mina. Mean, how much would a person want to take off from what he would normally make? Let's say this guy's a lawyer. He bills $1,000 an hour. This guy works. Look at his eyes. Look at what he's like. He barely could stand up from how difficult the work is. What would happen if you told him, I just want you to walk and return this lost object? Everything according to how difficult is the work and how much the pay is. There are certain jobs that obviously have very little effort, but huge payout, or the opposite. So whatever it is that he would want to say, you will give me an hour off. I wouldn't have to work. I wouldn't be making the amount of money I normally make, but I would have an easier job. How much would I be willing to do for the easier job? That's how much you pay him, but not how much he's losing for that. Not the billable hours of that he would get in his law firm. Now, however, the Mishnah did tell us that im yesham bezin. Let's say the guy he'd rather work hard. There's a reason why he went into this profession and earn the sela than do the easy work of a shavas aveda. So then, if there's a court, they said maslim of names, and then he can stipulate in front of them how much his wages are. I said, look, Rabbi said, I'll return this guy's object, but I want to get paid for what the job would normally be. I found this woman's diamond. It's worth $20,000. I would get $5,000 for returning. For the job that I would do. I want to get paid what I would normally get paid. So the Gemara brings a story that Isser was his name, Rav Safra, of an Iskabad Adadi. They had a business deal that they did together. And also Rav Safra went in Polyglay. He divided the merchandise. There wasn't money. It was just things that needed to be evaluated. He divided, so like no more a partnership here. He wanted to separate. So he divided the merchandise below died to the Isser without the awareness of his partner Isser. And he did a Ba'api Beitrei in front of two people. He said, that's it. Let's I want my own company, splitting the merchandise. Let's evaluate it. Okay, it's worth 20,000. Give him 10, give me 10, we're out. Now also came to Rabbi Avuna. He came from the Rabbi Avuna. He said, Zil Aisi Tlasa, bring 3 people, the Palgis Kamayu, that you split the merchandise in front of them. That's one option you could do. Or as you continue to have bring 2 out of the 3, meaning let the 2 testify that we were 3 as a bezin. Or another option you could do is Trei Sahadi. You could bring 2 witnesses, the Palgis Ba'ape Beit Lasa, that those 2 people saw you split in front of 3. In other words, basically, it's not enough with, you had to have done this in front of a court of 3. So either bring those 3, bring 2 out of the 3, or bring 2 people that saw you do it in front of those 3. So Malay, so Rav Safra said to him, we didn't know this idea that it had to be done in front of 3 people. Malay says, that's our Mishnah that we learned here. The Mishnah said, Im Yesham Bezin, this guy he found a Naveda, very expensive old manuscript worth $30,000. Someone that fell out of a satchel, and the guy's like, I'll return it, but I have a job to do. I don't want to return it and get like a nickel and a dime. So we said, if there's a bezdin, now regular bezdin has 3 people. We said, Master, if you can stipulate in front of them and say that, look, I'm only returning if I get compensated for what my job would normally be. Ain't sham bezdin. There's no bezdin. So said the Mishnah, so in front of who could he stipulate? No, shaloi kaidim. He comes first, doesn't have to return it. But one thing we see is that there's no power to declare ownerless the money of one person for another person, which you're taking away from the money of the guy who lost it because he's going to have to compensate. You can't do it with less than 3 people. So you see that you want to take away from the merchandise of your partner, you got to have a bezdin of 3 people. But Malay said to him, me dummy, how could you compare the cases? There, you're taking away money from the owner of the lost object. You're giving it to this random guy who found it, meaning by the wages that he's gonna have to pay. That's taking away from one person's money. That being a bezdin, you need a court. He's taking what's his, meaning we're both partners in this merger. It's mine and his. So we just needed to reveal the reality that they should know that we split it equally. So betray sagila. So with 2 people would be enough. You don't need a bezdin for that. I'm not taking away money from him or him from me. We're just splitting it. And Teddy, you should know this to be true because it's not. We learned the Mishnah that says, Almana, a widow who is getting fed from the estate of the orphans, Meicheres, she sells the properties of the estate for her food, Shaloi b'fnei bezdin, not in front of court. As long as 2 people see that she's not selling it too cheap, you see that she does not need a bezdin. So therefore, you see that when she has rights to it, like here when there's partners, you have rights to it, that you don't need to have a bezdin. Taisus actually asked. The top Taisus says, how could you bring a raya from the almana? That the Gemara says in Ksubas, that's because we made exceptions for the widow because we want her to find favor to want to marry in the first place. Where if she thinks that she's not going to be able to sell easily when she's widowed, she's not going to want to get married, or because the late husband, didn't really want her to be disgraced in the court. But how could you compare that to partners? So says Taisus, no, that since a widow could sell, even though it's not really hers, not in court because of china, because of finding favor, here also a partner could take what is his, not in court, even though you don't have the reason of chen, meaning they equal each other out. The partner is a little bit better because it's his own. The widow is not hers; it's the orphans. But there is chen, so that's why he considers them to be equivalent. But one thing you see is that you don't need a bezin. Amalei which Abai rejects that proof. It says no. Didn't we learn regarding that widow that Rabbi Yisrael Rabbi Nachman says Amana in the tzricha bezin shal mumchen. This we said that the widow doesn't have to sell it in front of the court. Another court of professionals, dayan, these intimidating rabbis with the long beards and their white shirts and everything. But she does need a court of 3 people, of regular people, and therefore that's it says you who split the merchandise with your partner, you got to bring that you did in front of a bezin, because you do need a bezin. Maybe not mumchin, maybe regular people, but it's got to be 3 people, and therefore that's why, as we learned in the halach of our Mishnah, that we said if there's a bezdin, then you masm if name. If not, because you do need to have a bezdin. You need to have 3 people when it comes to monetary divisions. Thank you. Anytime.